Good evening, welcome to Have I Got News For You? I'm Frankie Boyle. In the news this week, at an earth-shattering press conference, the Queen and Prince Philip revealed that David Icke was right all along. After Beyoncé gets a flat tyre, the bloke at the garage tries a little too hard to impress her. And at the BBC, news reaches the dressing room that Piers Morgan has pulled out of Question Time. On Ian's team tonight is a trenchant journalist and author who's been compared to Katie Hopkins, although unlike Katie Hopkins, she still has a reflection. Please welcome Talk Radio's Julia Hartley-Brewer. And with Paul tonight is the writer and star of BBC sitcom Citizen Khan. He's never shared a stage with extremists. Until tonight, please welcome Adil Ray. And we start with the bigger stories of the week. Paul and Adil, take a look at this.
Oh yes, this is the new Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, and there's Jeremy Corbyn probably on his way to vote, and do it again, would you? Yeah, thank you. That's the not going around in circles, and that's the sort of thing you need to do when you want to get your picture in the paper. So yes, lots of people getting out and voting.
Yeah, this is the various elections we've had. This is the election of Sadiq Khan as London Mayor, and the massive resurgence of the Tories in Scotland that put them into quite a poor second. Did you follow the London Mayor debate?
I did, yes. Followed it with great delight, but on behalf of all Muslims, and that's what I do. You know, as a Muslim, we talk on behalf of all of us. And there is 1.6 billion of us, and I have spoken to them all before we came on tonight. We're not very happy because he's not a proper Muslim. Yeah, no beard. In fact, you'd be a better Muslim than Sadiq Khan, I think. Yeah. And if you're wondering where my beard is, they wouldn't let me through security with it. So.
So yes. Sadiq Khan, though, is we just don't know enough about him. We don't know anything about his background. I mean, like, what did his father do for a living?
Yeah.
Exactly. There was quite a sad moment where Paul Golding, who's the head of Britain First, he turned his back on Sadiq Khan during his acceptance speech. I thought it'd be good if he'd accidentally turned to face Mecca.
Quite possibly what was happening, yeah. But so we wait now as Muslims to see what Sadiq Khan has got in store. You know, it's been in a week and we've not seen any evidence of King's Cross changing to King's Abdullah's Cross, or you know, or Buckingham Palace losing the ham bit. I think it was quite important. So just in Buckingham Palace, I think. Yeah, Buckingham Palace, I think would work. Yes. Yeah.
He went on the first day straight to a Holocaust memorial service, didn't he?
Yes, that was convenient, wasn't it?
Yeah, and good.
Yeah.
He also spent the entire first day not meeting Jeremy Corbyn, and the second day, and the third day, and there wasn't actually a meeting until Monday.
Well, he doesn't want to share a platform with extremists anymore.
Yeah. I interviewed Sadiq Khan actually on my Talk Radio show. I thought I'd get that in. And
Talk Radio show.
Yeah. But I interviewed all the candidates, and I said to him, so would a victory for Sadiq Khan for the London Mayor, would that be a victory for Jeremy Corbyn's leadership of the Labour Party? And Sadiq Khan said, is that the time?
What was it, prayer time, was it? That's right. Get used to that. Get used to that. Sadiq Khan can walk out of any interview any time. I've got to go. Sorry, it's prayer time. So, good on you, Sadiq.
It seemed to be the implication from Goldsmith's campaign was this guy sympathises with extremists, so you might get a mayor who sympathises with terrorists, and what I couldn't understand, it used the machinery of local government to aid terrorism.
Yeah.
You never guess what the mayor's gone and done? Free Oyster cards for ISIS. The Conservative candidate, Zac Goldsmith, was thought by many to have run a divisive campaign, but what happened to Linton Crosby, the man who ran his campaign this week?
He got knighted.
He was knighted. Yes. Perhaps to put his Islamophobic campaign into the context of the Crusades.
Well, I must say at this point that Sadiq did have to apologise during the campaign for calling moderate Muslims Uncle Toms. A couple of years ago. I just, you know, this is balance, and I don't want Whittingdale making a fuss about. I just throw that in. It is, you know, there are things to say on both sides.
What camping metaphor did Sadiq Khan use to describe Labour's future?
We have to appeal to people outside of our own tents.
Yeah, that's almost exactly it. He said Labour has to be a big tent that appeals to everyone. To which Jeremy Corbyn quickly responded, we have a very big tent. It's an enormous tent. It's just that everybody else is outside pissing into it.
just saying, they want us all to go camping with them. Because I ain't sharing a tent with Diane Abbott. I don't know about you.
Hasn't bothered me in the past.
Can you tell what's going on here?
Is it the man on the right, as we look, is incredibly strong and he's lifting up all the others?
Are these Scottish Tories? I can see some ginger hair. No offence.
Is that the first time anyone said no offence? Frankie Boyle.
None taken. These are some new members of the Scottish Parliament. This is Edward Mountain, MSP for Highlands and Islands. What special skill does he have that involves a cow?
I do actually know this one. He is qualified to artificially inseminate cows.
How do you know that? Correct answer. Next up, we've got Lib Dem MSP Willie Rennie. He's been a runner-up in the Scottish Championships for carrying what?
A grudge.
That's a hotly contested field. He was runner-up in the 2006 Scottish Coal Carrying Championships.
Ah, one way of keeping warm without burning it.
In Scotland, there was a strong SNP vote from the Scottish people who hate Britain, a big Tory vote from the Scottish people who hate Scottish people, and a small Labour vote from the Scottish people who hate themselves.
No one can call the BBC biased tonight.
Jeremy Corbyn didn't do well in Scotland because people in Scotland don't trust anyone who looks old but still has teeth. Ian and Julia, take a look at this.
Oh, free pasties for everyone.
Oh, sorry, missed that.
Cheers, yes. They don't like it up 'em. And we're all going to die in World War III. So that's brilliant. Nice cheery news from the EU referendum campaign.
This stage of the campaign, you've got to up it. So you've basically got to tell people it's death and bubonic plague. And that's what'll happen if you leave.
Boris has invested himself heavily in this, hasn't he? I think if they lose this, Boris will be brought into Cameron's office on the next day and told, well, it's a bit unconventional, Boris, but I'm making you Israel's ambassador to Syria.
The thing I find really strange is how much war has got involved with this, because we have Boris Johnson singing Ode to Joy in German this week. We've had Ken Livingstone, who's got like Hitler Tourette's. He keeps mentioning Hitler. And we've got Cameron talking about World War III. I just don't know what's gone wrong in the last week.
We haven't got the song, have we?
Yes, we do. We can have a look at it.
I can sing the Ode to Joy in German. I will. If you keep teasing me being a little ignorant, I will. Freude, schöne Goethe, anyway, you know it.
You realise, of course, we still have 6 weeks to go.
Does that think some politicians are a clever person pretending to be an idiot, or an idiot pretending to be clever? He's an idiot pretending to be an idiot. This is day one, war and genocide. Yeah. Surely it's just going to end with Cameron screaming Ebola through a rolled-up newspaper.
No, you would think that, you know, if he really believed that as soon as we leave the EU there'll be a world war, just don't have the referendum then.
He did say just a few months ago that he was considering, though he didn't know which way he was going to go, depending on the reforms he got. And now he's saying catastrophic, death and destruction.
Are you suggesting he's exaggerating?
I'm suggesting that he's a liar. I just can't work out if he's doing it now or he did it then.
Or both.
Or both.
You get every American general or spy chief comes in and says, you must remain.
No, but it is bizarre, because they keep saying it's really important that we stay in this political union with the EU, and yet, bizarrely, are not in a political union with Mexico themselves. They're planning to build a wall. So what's that about?
It's just Trump who's planning to build a wall, isn't it? I don't think it's official US policy yet. The Bricklayers' Union have been really strong.
Absolutely.
Well, a lot of them are Mexicans.
Indeed.
What have ITV done to upset approximately half the Brexit people?
Oh, ITV have decided to put Nigel Farage up for one of their big debates, and so they've upset Vote Leave, and Vote Leave is now threatening to sue because they say they're the official campaign, and therefore it should be them and not Nigel Farage who gets to choose who goes up.
And Vote Leave would rather have Boris.
Anyone, literally anyone. Ken Livingstone shouting Hitler every 3 minutes. David Christopher.
And while we've veered off into the world of TV, what has John Whittingdale hit us up with this week?
Damn good thrashing.
He's come up with a white paper on broadcasting, which is not as extreme as was trailed,
As so often with the government, they've said they're going to do one thing, and then people have said that's a terrible idea, and they've said, oh, really? Oh, all right, we won't do it. Which is very good news.
But isn't there something quite strange in a government that isn't talking to junior doctors, getting wound up about what time Strictly comes on?
Well, Whittingdale and Strictly are two words you should...
Oh, I did notice there was something about, it did say, we don't mind Strictly, but perhaps not Bargain Hunt. I think that was actually mentioned in the white paper. This is just some old blokes just choosing what they like, isn't it?
What about if the BBC's popular programmes had a kind of handicap system, so they could make a property programme, but it had to be set in the Gaza Strip? Homes under a Hamas. For reasons that will become clear, although are admittedly extremely tenuous, let's have a look at a block of flats being demolished in Glasgow as seen through the camera lens of one excited onlooker. This week saw the official launch of the EU referendum campaigns. David Cameron has implied that leaving the EU could lead to World War III, whereas Nigel Farage is hoping for a rerun of World War II. This week we saw the one sure sign a referendum is on its way, as Gordon Brown was brought out of retirement to dance on a ball like an old abused circus bear.
You just can't let it go, can you?
Coronado, here's another one for you.
Yes. There's the Queen with the Chinese president. Who? The president. There's Prince Philip doing the barest minimum. Yeah, so it's about leaks, isn't it, essentially? Not leaks, but sort of overheard conversations, isn't it? Cameron also talked about corrupt government leaders arriving for a conference and stuff. And
Yes, this is the Prime Minister and the Queen have been caught on camera, sticking it to the jolly old foreigners. Do you know...
I mean, it's an incredible story. I mean, the Prime Minister is caught on camera telling the truth.
Shall we have a little look at what Cameron said?
Yeah, absolutely. Very successful cabinet meeting this morning. We talk about our anti-corruption summit. We've got the Nigerians, actually lots of leaders of some fantastically corrupt countries coming to Britain. Nigeria and Afghanistan, possibly the two most corrupt countries. But this particular president is actually not corrupt. Oh, he's trying very hard.
They're not coming at their own expense.
I mean, yes.
But in fairness, the Nigerian president has said, you know, he doesn't want an apology. Just $4 billion on his credit card details.
I have to say, I mean, the Archbishop of Canterbury was trying to point out to the Prime Minister that this particular Nigerian Prime Minister is trying to stop corruption. And the way Cameron was selling it was trying to tell the Queen, this is going to be great, we've got the top corrupt people in the world coming.
To learn from us.
Yeah. Well, what he demanded, the Nigerian president, is he said, I don't want an apology, I'd like some of the money back. Because most of the Nigerian money flows into Britain through the British colonies and ends up in houses in London, schools, cars, dealerships. And he's saying, if you could stop our kleptocrats spending all the money in your tax havens, then perhaps that would be a start. And at that point, Cameron remembered mum and dad and probably went a bit quiet. And it was just massive humbug. Followed with Burko saying, oh, I hope they're paying on their expenses. Who was involved in a bit of an expenses scam? Oh, it was the Speaker, wasn't it?
What did he do?
What did he do? He double-flipped his house. He had to pay some of the money back. I mean, these are all minor corruptions compared to 8 billion trillion from Nigeria, but they're in the same game, aren't they?
But they are.
What grounds did David Cameron have for calling Nigeria and Afghanistan fantastically corrupt?
Facts.
You're actually quite close to the real answer.
There's a transparency index of corrupt countries.
I think Afghanistan is third from the bottom. Nigeria's a good way up. We're number 10. Very proud.
So is that the 10 most corrupt or the... what top 10 are we in?
You move up the league like Leicester and just suddenly come and surprise everyone.
There's a great story where apparently the Pakistani delegation went to the anti-corruption conference at the time, and back then, at the end of the conference, they would announce who are the most ranked anti-corrupt countries in the world. And they came to the announcer goes, well, Pakistan started the conference at number 7, but having tried to bribe the anti-corruption committee, they find themselves now at number 2.
There's a theory, isn't there, that they maybe did it deliberately to create a big stink around the Euro referendum. I sort of think possibly Cameron is saving the Queen's death for when he needs a really big news story. I think he'll go for his weekly meeting one week. He'll take a pillow out of his briefcase and say, I'm sorry, ma'am. ISIS have landed in Cornwall. How did the Queen add to things?
The Queen was overheard saying the Chinese were a bit tricky, rude. Was that what she said?
Yes, rude.
The royal family have got form when it comes to upsetting the Chinese. Surprisingly, it's not Prince Philip. Can you remember who it was?
Prince Charles described the Chinese communist leadership as a bunch of ghastly old waxworks.
Was this just before the ambassador then left? Just before he complimented him on his chocolates.
We have a picture of Prince Charles making that remark. There has been some good news for the Queen this week. Why is she looking so happy here?
She's become a Muslim. She's wearing a hijab. So.
Horse racing, a horse won something.
Did indeed. She won the Royal Windsor Horse Show. Well, not her, one of her horses.
Yes. That would be considered bias amongst the judges otherwise.
And here's what she won. A Tesco gift card. This is the news that David Cameron and the Queen have been filmed making indiscreet comments about foreigners. This all came despite the fact that we're always told the royal family are great for tourism and business. Perhaps if we had a country worth visiting, we wouldn't have to parade the products of centuries of incest around to try to sell fridge magnets.
Has this turned into a party political?
On their last visit, the Chinese threatened to call the trip off. The Queen said they were very rude to the ambassador. But then again, if you're trying to get Chinese people to ask you for a Ferrero Rocher...
That's a Prince Philip joke.
Ian and Julia, here's another one for you.
Oh, exam stress.
Yes, old-fashioned schooling. Ferro.
Bend over, lad, this won't hurt.
And I think that's a U-turn. This is another government U-turn, to add to all the other ones. And this one's over academies.
Yes.
It was in the middle of the last budget, and I think it was thrown in as to show that they do have some ideas, even if they're very, very bad. It's just a new way of governing.
There was also some controversy around the SATs exams. What happened to the reading test paper for 7-year-olds?
Oh, it was leaked. Someone gave it away.
A rogue examiner, apparently, looked at it on a website and then gave it away.
I think the rogue examiner is now on the run and is the Edward Snowden of telling people how to spell necessary.
Well, I got very stressed by exams last week because it turns out an article I'd written a year ago about why 16 and 17-year-olds should not be allowed to vote went on an SQA, a Scottish Qualifications Authority, higher English exam at GCSE. And I only discovered this when the first 20, 30, 40 abusive tweets came through. And eventually, after about 5,000 abusive tweets, I worked out what has happened. But judging by their spelling, because what is a knut anyway? But judging by
history paper.
Judging by their spelling, I don't think many of the people complaining about this actually passed the exam.
That's right. Your article was in a Scottish exam, and apparently the answer was B, bollocks. It's interesting to meet you, actually, because I only know you through your Telegraph column, and all I know is that people get more right-wing as they get older, so I'd always assumed that you were about 295 years old. There was a piece that Molly Morris, aged 11, wrote to The Guardian. She said, "If I were the Prime Minister, I would change these tests because they are unfair for Year 6 children. I wonder if he knows that the last sentence I wrote was in the subjunctive form." Yes, well done, Molly, although the full stop should have come after the brackets. The exclamation mark is redundant, and it's the subjunctive mood, not form.
Actually, the full stop shouldn't have come after the brackets. That's a separate sentence in parentheses. You're quite wrong.
To be fair, I didn't even write this, so... well done, Molly. In the last 12 months, the government has done more U-turns than Matt LeBlanc screeching around the cenotaph. 24, in fact. So to celebrate this remarkable achievement, shall we play a game with the U-turn randomiser? Let's give it a dry run to help you get your heads around the concept. Oh.
Are these all achievable ambitions?
We're going to have a pop on the randomiser now, and feel free to buzz in. You know what the U-turn was?
Chicken.
Chicken. What was the U-turn about chicken?
It didn't cross the road?
It was the U-turn that they were forced to do on dropping animal welfare codes, specifically on chicken farmed for meat.
Oh.
Now, instead of facing an agonising and brutal death, chickens can look forward to a brutal death. Let's have another pop on the randomiser. Women.
They're allowed now, are they?
Surely not.
Was this pensions for women?
No.
No. Because of EU rules, there's a qualification, a categorisation of tampons as luxury items. And a lot of women say they're not luxury items, they're a necessity. Why are we paying tax on them? And the equivalent items for men don't get taxed.
What equivalent items for men, Ian? Do tell.
What's about football?
The fact is that tampons aren't a luxury item because no one's ever taken them onto desert island desks. There's another last pop on the randomiser.
I'd be disappointed if gay sex wasn't the last one, 'cause otherwise, what's it doing there? It's now restricted between people of the same sex. Before anybody could join in, but now they're being quite rigid.
It was the U-turn that they did on poppers.
Oh, yes.
In Parliament, they were having trouble forcing it through. Do you know what would have helped with that? Poppers. The government was forced into a U-turn on academies. The great thing about academies is that they can't be run at a profit, so they only attract people who really want to raise standards for students, or deny evolution, or introduce Sharia law. And so to round two, the strengthometer of news. Fingers on buzzers, teams. Here's the first one.
This is genius. These sheep were stolen. Now, they had a photograph of the sheep that were stolen, and the police put it out, and they pixelated the faces of the sheep for privacy reasons under the human rights legislation. Genuinely.
It wasn't exactly sheep privacy. They said the identity of the lambs has been protected due to their age and vulnerability. And deliciousness. The police later revealed that it was a joke. Meanwhile, what has the Greater Manchester Police been planning for?
Is this the possible terror attack in a shopping centre?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
They've been carrying out a training exercise simulating an IS-style attack on the Trafford Shopping Centre in Manchester. Let's take a look. It's all just staged, they're all just actors, obviously, but it was horrifyingly realistic. And some people got very annoyed. Do you think it was a bad idea?
Well, I spoke to all the Muslims before we came on tonight.
50-50 split.
Yeah. A lot of people, a lot of Muslims are annoyed that they used Allahu Akbar, which I'm quite surprised by, because if you are doing a training exercise about possible people from ISIS, it's quite likely that they might be shouting Allahu Akbar, so fair enough to the police, I think. But I think a lot of Muslims are sort of saying, well, look, Allahu Akbar is used for different things, and, you know, if you are in a shopping centre and you hear somebody shout out Allahu Akbar, it could be that they could be about to bomb you, or it could be that they're about to pray, or there's a sale on it next. So, you know, I don't think that's only fair. They just want to make sure there's a distinction.
One person tweeted, maybe in future training, the suicide bomber could shout, I'm blowing myself up for a generic terrorist cause. Postmodern terrorism, that's what we want. This is the news that the Greater Manchester Police have carried out a terrorist training exercise. If people think shouting Allahu Akbar is going to cause pandemonium, try going to the Trafford Centre and shouting that it's the last orders at Wetherspoons. Fingers on the buzzers, teams. Here's the next one. Absolutely no idea what this is about.
No.
This is the news that the classic Children Crossing sign has been given a makeover.
No.
The designer Margaret Calvert says the new look sign is a radical change from the original. Does anyone want to see it? Here's the 1962 original.
Yep.
And here it is after the redesign.
That's uncanny.
And here they are together with the new one on the right, or the left. I've lost track slightly. Anyone spot the differences?
It's very unrealistic, though, because kids don't walk to school anymore. It should just be a picture of a 4x4 and an angry mum.
And they've got faces as well. These kids wouldn't be able to find a road where they shouted at where it was.
Talking of spot the differences,
Yes.
Greg's the Baker's made a puzzle. Can you see what's going on here? There's a challenge they made.
Well, is it like a Rubik's Cube or something?
The challenge is they're all steak bakes, but one is a cheese and onion slice. There you go. Moved on from the big stories.
This rule about BBC shows being distinctive, when does it kick in?
This is the news that the classic Children Crossing sign has been given a makeover. I see so many silhouettes in the newspapers these days. When I saw that sign, I just assumed that one of them was a prostitute and the other a well-known actor in Family Man. Fingers on buzzers, teams.
This is the woman who got a wedding gift from a guest, and it cost £100, and she basically complained and said it wasn't enough and sent it back.
Yes, it's exactly that. She sent an email that said, "We were surprised that your contribution didn't seem to match the warmth of your good wishes on our big day." The guest had recently received an inheritance, and the bride's email to her went on, "In view of your own position, if you wanted to send any adjustment, it would be thankfully received."
I've sent an adjustment, yeah, 0.
Do you know what she replied?
Fuck off.
Meanwhile, why has a receptionist at a city firm been sent home on her first day?
She wasn't wearing high heels. Is that right?
That's right.
Yeah.
She wasn't wearing high heels, which employment agency Portico said was obligatory, but only for women. This is the wedding guest who was sent an email by the bride asking for an increase in her £100 gift. The outraged guest has been asking advice for what to do next. Sleep with the husband? I don't know. In other news, a city worker has been told she had to wear high heels. The equalities officer of the company employing Miss Thorpe has since changed the policy and now says workers can wear high-heeled shoes or, if they prefer, plain, flat, ugly lesbian shoes. It's up to them. Time now for the odd one out round. Ian and Julia, UFO4R, Pot Black Snooker, the Biami Tribe, the Natural Environment Research Council's Polar Research Vessel, and the fossilised egg of an elephant bird.
Well, we know about the polar vessel because people voted for it to be called Boaty McBoatface. And Boring McBoringface in the government decided that was wrong because they're going to call it the Sir David Attenborough. But that prompted a petition, rather wonderfully, for Sir David Attenborough to change his name by deed poll to Sir David McDavidface.
So it's about changing your name? It's not called Pot Black anymore.
Yeah.
Every colour is equal, it's called now.
Is there a link to David Attenborough here?
Yes, because David Attenborough was the controller of BBC Two when he commissioned Pot Black back in 1969. Because it was a programme made for colour TV, as it was.
Did he discover all these apart from which one didn't he? He didn't,
Boaty McBoatface.
he didn't
That's
discover
the other one
that.
because
He didn't discover that, but he was named after it or something.
Is the right answer.
Yeah.
They're all known thanks to the work of Sir David Attenborough, apart from the UK's new polar research vessel, which is going to be named after him. I don't know if you followed the whole Boaty McBoatface thing. I thought it could have gone a lot worse if you were asking the British public to decide on something. You're lucky it wasn't called Harold Shipman. I sort of feel bad for not getting the joke. Everybody loved it. I just think putting Mac in front of something doesn't necessarily make it funny. Look at Michael McIntyre. Naming contests are notorious for going awry. What forced American fizzy drinks brand Mountain Dew to ignore a public vote to name its new apple-flavoured drink in 2012? It was won by the name Hitler Did Nothing Wrong.
Submitted by Ken.
I would drink Mountain Dew. Mountain Dew.
The hitherto unknown Biami tribe of Papua New Guinea were discovered by David Attenborough while filming a documentary in 1971. What did David Attenborough do with the egg from the gigantic but extinct elephant bird?
He had to put it together because
did?
yes, put it all back together.
He reconstructed it from over 1,000 pieces. Here's what he started out with. And here's his first attempt. And then he made this. Sir David was so delighted to hear that a boat had been named after him that he celebrated his birthday by cracking a bottle of champagne across his own face. What could be a more appropriate 90th birthday gift for David Attenborough than to give his name to a polar research vessel as they both begin a long, cold journey to a place of endless night? Happy birthday, Sir David. Paul and Adel, here are yours. 420 billion slugs, 2,186 goats, 2 wolves and 1 weasel.
Is the weasel the only one that nearly drowned in a bottle of milk?
Is the weasel the one that was in the Hadron Collider?
It is.
Ah, yes, yes.
He ate through a cable and it stopped working. Mm-hmm. So these other things did something. Stop something working.
Play this game. I can do that. And that's an exclusive. So this is animals that have destroyed, have broken into something or eaten something that have created a havoc. So the wolves, they broke up annual general meeting of Goldman Sachs.
I read something recently about
Yeah.
big slugs or
Big slugs.
coming to attack us.
Yeah, watch out,
for the
big slugs. Yeah. Watch out, the big slugs are coming to kill us.
Slug
Is that
mania.
what happens if we leave the EU?
You're absolutely on the right track. They've all inconvenienced people except
yes.
one.
Apart from the goats.
It's actually the wolves.
Oh, yes.
They have all inconvenienced people apart from the wolves, which are a positive boon for Belarus's Eurovision entry, Ivan. Ivan is going to perform, I think, tonight, naked, with two presumably quite baffled wolves.
Hopefully well-fed wolves at this point.
Hopefully well-drugged wolves.
Yeah.
What does Ivan say is key to performing naked with wolves?
It's a show called Dangling with Wolves.
Is the wolf wearing something in the sort of nether regions? There seems to be
Yeah.
something, what is like a thong?
He's
or...
wearing these other bloke's underpants.
He's naked and the wolf's wearing a thong.
Yeah, that's what's going on there.
The Eurovision knows its audience.
And that's a blue screen, so God knows what the image will be like on the night.
What he said to the Mail Online was, the most important thing is to remember to feed them sausages on time. A new super breed of sex-mad, sleepless slugs has arrived from Spain.
Oh, an alliterative threat.
Do you know how they got over here?
Really slowly.
Just been tossed from garden to garden.
For some people, that's a summer holiday.
According to the Daily Mail, it was in some salad. You know? Why might these slugs be dangerous to road users?
The car crushes the slug gets caught up in the rubber and the slug interact together in the way that only synthetic material and a live animal can, and it all goes wrong.
Well, I'm going to give you a point for that, because actually they get run over in the road,
Yes.
other slugs come out to eat them, and it creates a slug slick. Looking forward to that. Do you know how 2,186 goats forced a plane to make an emergency landing?
Had a gun. I'm speaking for all the others behind me.
They set an emergency alarm off, and the crew discovered the cause of the alarm wasn't a fire, but the result of extreme levels of exhaust gases from the goats.
Nervous flyers.
A weasel disrupted the Large Hadron Collider last week. The Large Hadron Collider has revealed a lot of previously unknown information to scientists. For example, we now know how to cook a weasel to perfection. Belarus's Eurovision entry, Ivan, will perform with wolves. The tragedy is, he's said to his friends so often in the past that he's going to be performing with wolves at Eurovision that nobody believes him anymore. Time now for the Missing Words Round, which this week features as its guest publication, Parking Today. If, like me, you're a massive fan of parking conventions, there's a brilliant one every day on the M25. And we start with designer chickens what?
Are made before designer eggs.
That's the old debate.
Yeah, sorted that one out.
Designer chickens at risk from thieves. Thieves are targeting middle-class homes and stealing rare chickens. Good. Next up, Parking Today editor John Van Horn is not what, but he is what?
I love the fact that the editor is called Van Horn of Parking Today. That's just brilliant.
He is not perfect, but he is sane.
That's a great defence of editors.
One of his colleagues in Parking Today writes that John is always looking ahead. He doesn't spend time looking behind him. He must be shit at parking then. Next up, Dame Joan Collins, furious about what outside her house?
Lack of paparazzi.
The world.
She's upset about a puddle outside her house. Joan eventually filled the hole in quickly, using whatever the hell it is she puts on her face. Next up, robots learn to be human by what?
By being replaced by other robots.
No. By reading steamy novels. If sex humanises machines, then my Henry the Hoover should be able to cook me breakfast soon. Next up, Professor Donald Shoup's book, What, has become a classic.
Book on parallel parking has become a classic.
Professor Donald Shoup's book of How I Never Want to Write a Classic has become a classic.
I'm going to give you a point for the first one because the answer is the high cost of free parking is a classic in the parking industry. I don't know anything about Professor Donald Shoup, but I guarantee his nickname at school was Cream of Tomato. And finally, tea made from panda dung. What?
Taste of bamboo and shit.
Is tea made from panda dung among world's weirdest drinks?
Oh.
This is the news that you can now get panda tea made from poo. Poo tea is the name of the panda. So, the final scores are Paul and Adil have 8 points, and Ian and Julia have 6 points. And I leave you with the news that outside the Houses of Parliament, a Tory aide desperately tries to stop the press seeing what happens to Ian Duncan Smith after dark. At a Buckingham Palace tea party, there's relief that the cameraman who captured the Queen's undiplomatic remarks about the Chinese didn't look behind him. And outside an abattoir in Birmingham, Larry can't believe his luck, as his friends have remembered his birthday. Good night.